Thank you everybody for coming today for the Moodle Showcase, which is going to be a series of Zoom webinars held in conjunction with the Summer 2022 Hackdoc. For the first time since the start of the pandemic, has an in-person component. Several of us are here visiting Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, where it is sunny and beautiful and perhaps warmer than some of us would like, but very pleasant all the same. I'd like to turn things over now to our first speaker, Professor David Musicant of Carleton College, who is going to talk to us about using CodeCheck to learn programming.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let me share my screen and we'll do the usual. You need another word to describe the anxiety when you share your screen and wanting to make sure everything actually works. But are you seeing this? Are we good? Okay, cool. Awesome. So yeah, so I'm going to spend some time talking about CodeCheck, which is a tool that I've used this last term, which has been really great for my programming classes. And so those of you who teach programming or support people who teach programming might be interested in it. So and I'll do a demo in a minute, but CodeCheck is a free website that was developed by Kai Horstman. Horstman is a very well-known name in the programming education community. He's written a bunch of great textbooks, and he's built this website in particular for practicing coding, and I'll show a demo of it in a minute. And it's based on the idea of doing a bunch of very small programs and getting immediate feedback and being able to iterate and try a whole bunch of times. And there are a bunch of tools like this that have popped up in recent years. And most of them are expensive, which is great, and they provide premium tools, which are great. And CodeCheck hits this amazing sweet spot of free but still good. And I hope Kai would take that in the positive way in which I mean it. It's got lots of different programming languages that it supports. It notably has a bunch of different kinds of exercises that you can do, so not just fill in the blanks on coding, and I'll show demos of at least a few of those. It's customizable. You can change a lot of how some of it works, and I guess the reason why I'm here talking about it in this context is it integrates well with Moodle. It integrates so well with Moodle that I fear that the portion of my talk that is about Moodle is going to be more minimal than this audience maybe deserves, but it kind of, and some of that I have to thank Carly for, because she set it up for me, but from my perspective, it essentially just works. But I'll still demo that and show some best practices in using it. And codecheck.io is the easy to remember portion of the website name, though it redirects. So I'm going to jump over to the website itself. So I made screenshots in case everything went kablooey on me. But here's the CodeCheck site. And again, somebody should speak up or gesture wildly if you're not seeing my change of window here, because I'm now in my browser. And what I wanted to show was just some sample assignments. So you'll hit this link and come up over here. And so these are just some sample CodeCheck stuff that's built in. And so this is in Python. Again, it supports lots of languages, but Python is what I teach in my intro class. That's what I'm working with here. And what I've got going on here is it's just showing me a small little program, and it's asking me to work out what's going on, and these 1, 2s, 3s are like little stepping me through as it goes. So the idea being is it wants me to say press start to begin, so let's start to begin, initialize the with variable. So this particular kind of exercise is having me, the student, practice how variables get assigned, and this is a very straightforward one. They get much more complex as you go through them. I intentionally picked something straightforward just to show how the mechanism works, and not to take a lot of time working through detailed Python and so on. I'll hit enter. Now it says to initialize the height variable, so it wants me to enter that height's going to be 20. I'll hit enter, and now it wants me to work this third thing where it wants me to update the width variable. So here, even on a basic exercise, you're practicing how to do an assignment with modifying the variable on the right hand side of the assignment statement. So now it wants me to make this a 15. I'll hit enter. It tells me I got it all correct. I got a good job, and I got a check mark, which is awesome. Some of the other kinds of exercises it's got is it has these rearrangement exercises, which are also known as Parsons problems, due to who must be Parsons who proposed doing this. But this is these are really gaining in popularity in the CS education community. Is it lets you learn programming without having to necessarily know the syntax to type. So this is not an end game, but it's one of the tools that you can use to start learning how programming works. So the idea being is what you do is you would rearrange the code, and I can hit start, and you're trying to figure out what the right way is to order the program so that hopefully it does what the program actually asks me to do. So in this one in particular, it wants me to print the total number of coins that there are. So I can print that here, but that's in the wrong spot because I have to do the total first. Maybe I'll do it wrong first just to show the point. I'll say done. And it says, it even tells me which line is at the wrong position, or at least it thinks it is. Part of that is because it wants this comment first, and you can indent them differently. I can put that here to make the point, and compute the total number of coins. And I guess I got that here. And that looks like it might be right. No, because I'm printing the results. I have to compute the results first. So this is what happens when I'm talking while actually doing. That might be right. Yay, good job. Okay. So, and then another kind of exercise it's got many of them, is your traditional write code to do such and such, fill in a blank to do so and so. So this particular example is they want me to work out the area and perimeter of a rectangle, and they want me to fill in code where this ... is to do exactly that. And so the code to do that, I'll just fill it in, is area is going to be width times height. And what do they want? Perimeter. And I'll get it wrong again to make the point. It's going to be 2 times width plus 2 times height. And if I do this and I'll hit code check, it should presumably tell me I got it wrong. It didn't know, it couldn't find the variable perimeter. So let's get that right. And I'll hit that. And it even shows me what data it tried to get out, in this case, 200 and 600. Again, when I got it wrong, I'll come back to this again. It even will show me what it expected to get, what it got, and so on and so forth. This is really, really great for getting a chance to practice basic programming exercises without bringing up a whole programming environment. You can give students an exercise and they've got a bunch of them to work with, and so on. And so this is pretty great. And so here I'm going to come back to my slides so remember what it is I wanted to show. I've got my screenshots here. And so the key thing that involves Moodle is CodeCheck will remember who the students are and assign grades to the work that they do, and those grades sync back to Moodle. So you can use it for whatever purpose that you want to use it for. I mean, you can use it, again, it's just the grades are going in Moodle, and then it's up to you as an instructor to do what you want to do with it. And it works really nicely, and I'll show that here as we go. But to add it to Moodle, I just copied this screenshot from Kai's site, which I know that Carly worked with Kai in getting it set up. And again, from my perspective, thank you, Carly. It just worked. And so certainly during the Q&A, if people have questions about that, or if Carly has things she wants to pipe in, she definitely should, and so on. But Carly got it set up for me, and it went as an LTI tool, and it all worked. And I'll show an example of how that works. One sort of best practice, I added in red text some things that I thought were things that we shared that we could learn from experience, is we initially used the embedding feature in Moodle because we thought it was kind of cool to have it look like it was part of Moodle. And that was in principle cool. The reason why it just got us into trouble was because the CodeCheck site typically has a top bar, and then it typically has this this middle part, and so on and so forth. And especially students working on laptops with small screens. I didn't realize this until I actually saw them doing it in class. When we embedded CodeCheck, they were just side scrolling and up and down scrolling left and right, because I guess up and down scrolling left and right, because there was so relatively little room. So we found that just using a new window instead tended to work better. So what I'm going to do is I want to show how to create an assignment in CodeCheck and then how to put it in Moodle. So let me come down and do a bunch of that. So what we're looking at right now in CodeCheck is what CodeCheck calls an assignment. And an assignment consists of individual problems. In this case, this particular assignment consists of 5 problems. And if you want to add an assignment in CodeCheck, I mean, you could use some of the built-in assignments, but it's kind of neater to be able to make your own, especially if you want to be able to pick and choose what problems go in there. And the way you go about this in CodeCheck is right at the home page. There's a piece here called Create an Assignment. And one of the odd things about CodeCheck is there are no logins. It's all, you just show up and you just do the work you get, and you get unique URLs, web addresses for the work that you do, and you just have to remember them. That's good or bad, depending on your perspective, but it's what it does. So what it then wants for your assignment are URLs or IDs for problems that you want to add to the assignment. And so there's lots of places where you can get problems. One of them is just to go to CodeCheck itself. So let's open up another tab here and go to CodeCheck, and maybe I'll navigate to Python exercises. And there's a bunch of exercises built in. Here's one random exercise I'll pick. And maybe I want to use this exercise that Kai had already created as part of the assignment. So I'll come back to my edit assignments and I'll paste it in and boom. So any of the problems that Kai has on the website, you can just go ahead and grab. Another source of problems is from his textbooks. So it turns out that Kai Horstman has got a bunch of ebooks, well, real books and ebooks, and all of those ebooks have interactive problems inside them, which seem to be essentially embedded code checks. And you can take those problems and do it. So if you have access to his ebooks, and I've been using Vital Source, which is a website that lets you get access to ebooks for educators, you can get access to his books for free. And by the way, this is not anything underhanded. I learned all this from the CodeCheck website. Like, Horstman encourages you to do this. You can go into Vital Source. You can request free access for evaluation purposes for the books. I can go in, and then in the books, so here's this Python for Everyone book, which I've been using extensively. I didn't use it as a textbook for my class. I kind of wonder if I should have, but I decided to use CodeCheck after I picked a book. But I'll go to self-check. And here in his ebook is a random, I don't know, here's some random exercises. So, here's a Parsons problem in front of me. And the ID for that is what pops up in the tooltip. So that tooltip, if you can see it, that ebook-pi-3-cs06, that is the ID for this particular problem. And I can integrate that into CodeCheck. Copying tooltips is a cumbersome pain. Like, I was surprised after a bunch of Googling to discover that, in fact, you can't easily copy and paste a tooltip. What you can do is if you go into the browser developer tools and go into the HTML source for the page, you can grab it. So, or you can just stare at it and remember it. But I use Firefox. Chrome does something very similar. But if I go into the developer settings, and I'll go to tools, and it is in web developer tools. I'll scroll up here a bit. If I go onto the inspector and if I pick that problem right there, I think I picked the wrong spot. Let's try that again. Is it kind of here? I got to grab just the right. It's got to grab. There it is. And right here in the source is the actual ID for the problem. And I actually got pretty good at this. I actually got pretty fast at doing this. So I will copy that. I will come back to assignment. I will paste that in here, and that's now another problem that I'm adding to my assignment. And I can add as many of these as I want. You can also create your own custom problems, like completely from scratch, that if I have time, I'll show. But I'm going to save this. And what you get is 2 URLs to work. And by the way, down here, I can now see a preview of it. There's problem 1. There's problem 2, and that's the assignment that I just created. And I can give this to my students. And there's 2 URLs that you're given. One is the public URL for your students. This first one, which is what you give to the students if you're working outside of Moodle. I'll come back to Moodle in a minute for them to go ahead and try it. And then a private URL for you, which is the one that you can use in order to modify this. Because if I hit that private URL here, I'll just copy that and jump to another. I think I copied it. I'll just jump to another tab. What I get back is the same screen again, which gives me the ability to edit the assignment and so on. So, but if I come back here, so now what I want to do, again, if I'm working purely without Moodle, I would just give my students this address. But what I want to do is I want to embed this in Moodle in order to make it an assignment for them and be able to synchronize the grades. And so what I'm going to do is I will go to Moodle, and I'm using my Moodle class from this last term because it was convenient. So this is the course that I just finished. And I'm down here at a section right at the very, very end. And maybe I'll move you folks out of the way so I can do this. And I'm just going to add an activity. And again, this is stuff that most of you know well. It's going to be an external tool. And again, thank you, Carly, for setting this up. And so we'll give it a name, and I'll call it like practice code check assignment. And then right here in the tool URL, this is where I put the public URL, the one for the students. So if I can go back here and find it, here's the public URL. I'll go there, I'll Control-C and copy it. I'll come back to the tab I was in, and I'm going to paste it. And that is the URL that the student's going to work with. If I want a grade to sync, I've got a grade section. I want to make sure it gets 100 point. I don't even know for sure if you have to use 100 points. I can't remember what it does otherwise, but I've been playing nice and going with the 100-point structure. Privacy, if it's not set by default, you assume want to make sure that you're accepting grades from the tool. This is true for a lot of external tools. One thing that's optional, but Carly helped me figure this out, and I thought this was fantastic, is one of the catches is how do I keep track of these URLs? Because the CodeCheck documentation makes a point of saying, once it gives you this stuff, where's my tab? Once it gives you this stuff, these URLs, it's gone forever, especially since I can't even find it anymore. Did I lose it forever as a classic example? Tell me I didn't lose it forever. I think I did. Hang on, I'm gonna come back and do it. There it is. No, I didn't lose it forever. So since you might lose it forever, that's a problem. The public URL, I've just put into my Moodle assignment, so I've got it there. The private URL, it was Carly's idea. I'll copy that. I don't remember which tab I'm in. I am in this one. It was Carly's idea to go to show more and put it in the activity description and just make sure I am not actually showing the descriptions of the students. And that way here embedded in this Moodle activity, I've always got that link in order to be able to get to it. And I found that enormously helpful. So I will hit save, I'll hit save and return to course. And then once that's done, this is an assignment for students can do. And it's just, it's like any, your students will see it, it's there and it's good to go. When they go ahead and see it, they will hit practice code check assignment and boom, I'm seeing as an instructor, but that's only because I am logged into Moodle as me. If they are logged in as a student, it just works. Like they just go there, it goes as a student, they do the work and they don't have to synchronize anything. There's no manual process. It just automatically updates and it goes back to the Moodle gradebook. It's a little cumbersome for me to show because I'm an instructor and not a student. I could change my permissions. It would take me about 10 minutes to show you the 30-second result that it works and the gradebook in Moodle just synchronizes, but it all just goes, which is pretty awesome. And so I did, just to show you a sense of what I did for my class. Let me come back to my home page here. This is my intro CS class that I just taught. I'll just pick a random week. I've got every class, I've got one of these code checks and I just had it restricted to appear at the beginning of class so students didn't get a head start and end up with nothing to do in class. But I had one of these in every class. And I was mostly using the problems from his ebooks just because they were easy to get, but I occasionally created my own and I'll show a piece of that in a minute. But yeah, and then I spent 20 minutes in each class where students just worked on these things and I walked around and I helped them and then they could finish it after class and they could keep resubmitting and it would update their grades in Moodle and then I could just use it as best as I saw fit. I mean, I could share my syllabus, but it doesn't matter. You do what you do and it all just worked. These are slides showing what I just showed you folks in case everything went back. I've got some notes here. I want to see if I missed anything. I think I shared all the stuff. That all worked great. I did not try to have it supporting pairs of students. That would be something I'd be interested in trying out. Briefly, when I looked at the external tool stuff, I didn't see options there for doing groupings and pairings, but maybe that's possible. I haven't talked to Carly about that yet. I did get some anecdotal reports from students telling me that their grades were inexplicably dropping, like lowering or something. It didn't happen often. If it was a big problem, I would have heard about it more, but I had one student say, hey, my grade got lower. And someone said, oh yeah, I saw that too. I think it's more like they're going to the CodeCheck site and like they're starting over or something and their grade got synchronized from scratch and didn't quite realize that. So that's something I'd like to dive into more. I don't have a lot of detail on it. I just figured I'd report it as something. I don't think it's a bug so much as a user interface issue, but I figured I'd mention that because one or two students said they had noticed it. I'm going to show what it looks like to create your own problems. And again, I got the screenshot here, but if I jump to my browser, I can show it more precisely. So in CodeCheck, if you go to the CodeCheck site directly, you can upload a problem, as they call it, and you get to this screen. And so I'm going to use the TV cooking show approach of getting something that's partially done. But this is an example of, I wanted to show the Parsons problem version. Let me come back to this again. This is a version of how to create a Parsons problem, which I figured I'd start off more easily. This is the version where you are rearranging code. And so what that ends up looking like is you just take your code. This is Python code that I wrote. And then you use these special comments that you drop in the code tile, which indicates that you're going to be tiling those pieces of code. In other words, you want those to be in the so-called Parsons problem. You can also use the comment fixed, which means that code shouldn't be manageable, and that's just fixed to the student to see. And then up at the top, these are inputs to the program. So the way CodeCheck knows you've done it correctly is not by seeing if it exactly matched your ordering, which is awesome because there might be another ordering of the code that's correct. So instead, I give it input to the program, and I don't even give it correct output. I don't need to give it correct output because CodeCheck has the correct program. So it runs my input through the correct program, determines the output, and then it will see if the student's version works correctly. Then likewise, you then can give it a web page like I did here, where you can write some form of HTML with instructions for the student. And then if I scroll down and I hit submit changes, and it'll show me a preview of the output, what I get is a public URL and an edit URL. So I've got to use, so this edit URL I've got to remember. And this one, incidentally, I typically do this offline in my own, locally in my own computer. And then I make sure to keep that edit URL and a comment in that file. And then the public URL, if I just jump to that, what I've now got is a part, I just created this thing and this part is fixed. That was the part I put after fixed that I can't change. But all of this stuff I can drag over and put it in various places and do what I want to do with it. And it all just works. Or in this case, it's not going to work. That's a terrible program. It'll tell me something's wrong with it. And it's pretty darn cool. In terms of doing an actual, like, enter a program from scratch, I can show you what that one looks like. Oh, and I should say, and then this URL up here, the one that this assignment defines, that one is what I put into creating an assignment. So I come back to my creating an assignment page. I'll jump over here, edit assignment. Do I have the one I was creating? I probably do if I want to be amazingly cool. I think I don't, but I've got this new edit assignment. Let's drop it in there and I'll hit that. I'll hit save. And then boom, I've got a new assignment. If I want to visit that, yeah, here it is. I've got one problem and there's my assignment in there. And then I can, again, put that into Moodle and have it all work. If I want to create a code modification problem from scratch, I have one of those here also. That is this one. So this is an example of a piece of code where I want them to write code from scratch. So what I do for that one is, here is a Python program, if you ignore the comments, that I created. It is an iterative program. It says little pieces of this little old song about ants going marching and so on. And then what I do is I use these hide and edit comments to tell CodeCheck which code should hide. No, this is solution, well, hide. This is solution code. That's part of my solution that I want CodeCheck not to show. And then this edit tag is the one that tells CodeCheck with the ... what the student is actually going to modify. And then this code appears. And so not that you've committed all this to memory, but if I go ahead and hit submit changes, and it'll come up with a private and a public URL. So the private URL, again, I can use if I want to modify it. But if I hit that public one, what I've got is the instructions, and now it's given me a program for students to fill in with the code in there that I left in there, and then places to fill in code here after the def, and places to fill in here. And if I come back to the version that I edited, I'll hit back. Again, that's the edit portion, and it's going to determine correctness or not based on this encode that I gave it. And so I don't have to specify correct output. I just give it input, and it's measuring how the student's program does relative to how it runs when it runs against my code that I gave it. So I didn't do a ton of this because a lot of the problems built in were good, and this was more time consuming. But especially if I was using it for a class with a language that Kai didn't have a lot of basic support, this would be perfect. And I did do a little bit of this, and it worked really well. Let me come back to my slides, remind myself what else I wanted to add, because these are all screenshots. So yeah, so let me wrap up. CodeCheck is completely free. Which is pretty awesome. I hope it stays that way. We'll see what happens long term. I have no idea, but right now it's great. Moodle integration I've been really happy with. And again, thank you, Carly, for that as well. There are no logins at all. Again, that's both for better and for worse. You can't go into CodeCheck directly and see like what your students are doing, but you can see it in Moodle. So I guess it doesn't matter. I think the no logins problem is really more of a strange thing for people who aren't using it with a CMS in addition. Make sure you find a good place to keep those URLs though, because if you don't keep them, they are gone. And so if you're doing this, make sure you get access to Kai's ebooks and Vital Source, because that's free for educators, and I found it enormously helpful. And I just showed Python, but it supports a whole bunch of other languages, and that's pretty cool. And I did it in just one class, but I'm looking forward to trying it in others, and also sharing some of this with some of my other CS colleagues. But I'll go from there and take questions. And Charles, I don't know if you want to take this or how you want to go from here, but I'm happy to hear from other people.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Dave. That was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to giving this a try.
I have one thing I can add.
That's Carly.
So the reason for the no logins is because he didn't want to have to do any hardening of his site for FERPA or data storage privacy issues. So he just bypassed it all and said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So your student IDs are just numbers to me, and that's why we don't have logins. So, because I asked him about it. So that's it.
Further questions for Dave?
I've got a couple. Can I ask a question from here?
Yeah, can everybody hear Daniel?
We can turn it around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that'll.
Okay.
Hey, thank you for that. It was really interesting. I don't know where to look. You're everywhere.
Look here.
With the code completion problems, how forgiving is it? Do you have to literally provide the snippet of code that you put into place, or like, is it going to distinguish single quotes from double quotes?
To the best of my knowledge, and this is also what I get to say, not my tool, but I've been using it all term. What it's doing is it's checking the output. It's purely, I believe it's purely input output based. So in other words, the student could write a completely different piece of Python code. That raises the question, could the student write just print statements to get the right output if they had somehow figured out what the correct output is? Maybe but they don't actually know what it is unless they get it wrong and they sort of work it through. So can it be gamed? Maybe, but my understanding, my experience with it is in the fill in the code part is it's doing input output testing. And so therefore you don't have to match my code at all, as long as you get the output right.
That makes sense. And the other thing is, for the various languages, do you know how it works? Like, is it in parsing the languages themselves, or is it actually calling out to any specific language interpreters out there?
Yeah, so my understanding, I'll keep using phrasing like that, because just from reading the website and exchanging a couple of emails with Kai, is it is running those on his server. And so it is running Python, I don't know, probably 3.9 or whatever, and he's got a bunch of these languages installed. Are they running in virtual machines? Are they running in Dockers? Are they? I don't know, but he's actually running those.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave, this is Jason Alley from Lafayette. Thanks for this. Are there other services out there like CodeChecker that we might have heard of? I'm not familiar, but if you were aware of any, like maybe it would like spark a memory that I could be like, oh, like Chun Wai uses this in computer science. Maybe he might like CodeChecker instead.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of them. I know Vocarium is one of the players in that field. We just took a look at EdSTEM at Carleton briefly. I know that ZyBooks is doing a lot of this within their textbooks. So as is Runestone Interactive. Again, it's doing it within their textbooks. In terms, but those systems, do they let you create your own? Probably. Those are the ones that I'm aware of offhand. I know there are others. There was another one I looked at with Carly briefly. Oh, there was another one I was nagging Carly about for a while before we found this one that we had to run a server, and I can't remember what it was called. Do you remember, Carly?
Code Runner.
Thank you.
As I say, Code Runner.
Yep. And so Code Runner, this goes back to the previous question, is this stuff requires that it's got to be run on a server somewhere, which is not a small ask. Code Runner required us to install our own because the Code Runner folks didn't have the resources for it. If this really takes off, can Kai can he support it? I don't know. I chatted with him at SIGSI, the CS Ed conference, and he was very happy and open and friendly about it. And he was like, yeah, I think we can do this, but time will tell.
And for the geeks in the room, not that you're not a geek, Dave, I know you are.
But I'm not in the room.
I did set it up at the site level as an LTI tool so that we had a secret and key for the institution, but because he has to paste in the URLs anyway, I did not set it up as something he could just pick off of the activities menu, if that makes sense.
Right, but I did see that it recognized what it was.
But it did recognize what it was, and it got its custom icon and all of that stuff. So that was just.
Can't ask for a lighter weight tool than that, really.
It was pretty great.
All right, well, thank you very much, Dave.